recognize our distinguished ranking member, Mr. Roy from Texas, for his opening statement.
Well, I thank the distinguished chairman. It's nice to see you back, to be back here. I appreciate the witnesses for taking the time out of your schedules and your lives for being here, and appreciate your testimony today. I think that as we gather here today, it is important to remember and reflect that today is September 11th, that we as a nation reflect on the tragedy of the terrorist attacks 18 years ago today. A number of us on a bipartisan basis gathered on the Capitol steps today in a moment of silence, and our hearts and prayers and thoughts are all with obviously those affected by it and the family members, but importantly also that we remember those who in the law enforcement community, first responders, people that ran toward buildings, and really just want to thank all of our law enforcement community, including you, Mr. Homan, and your life of public service and law enforcement supporting the United States. I would also, note that I want to thank the chairman for moving the hearing to today. There was some discussion of it occurring during August. Last week would have been very difficult for people to make it, so I'm glad that it's this week so we can have a better attendance. I think as we discuss this topic, and it's an important topic, that perspective is important. This past summer, we've seen obviously an unprecedented surge in migrants crossing into our country. We saw a growing humanitarian crisis at our border. At the end of August, apprehensions for the fiscal year are around 818,000, and we've already outpaced the total for 2018, which was 521,000. We've seen agencies such as Border Patrol and ICE struggling to fulfill their mission. The committee's held 3 hearings in the month of July alone on immigration and border security. And during August, I personally made a visit to DHS facilities in McAllen, Texas. I was pleased to be joined by my friend, the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jordan, as well as my friend from Texas, Mr. Cloud, to look and see what's occurring down on our southern border. And they're important conversations to have. As a member of Congress, as an American, as a Christian, we should be compassionate and do the right thing. We should help those in need. The question, though, is that we are a nation of laws. We're a nation of sovereignty, and we are willing. And what question I think is important to ask is, are we willing to send a clear message of what those laws are and then figure out how to navigate within a system of rule of laws so that we can understand how it impacts our nation, who pays for health care, and what the expectations are. My understanding, for example, is the average number of cases that we're just talking about today is about 1,000 a year, give or take. That's an important number. These are real people. And for each one of those 1,000, this is extremely important, and we need to figure out the right processes and make them work. But let's keep in mind, we're talking about 1,000 cases. And right now, as we've previously discussed, we've had almost 900,000 people who have crossed and been apprehended into our country since last October 1. That's an enormous number, of whom almost 600,000 have been caught and released into our nation. These are matter of fact. We've had a significant onslaught where CBP and ICE are trying to figure out what to do. We've got an overwhelmed system. USCIS is overwhelmed. The entire system is bulging at the seams because we, this body, refuse to do our job. Simply put, we're not doing our job to send clear signals and to make sure that the resources are there to adequately deal with the situation at hand. Let's think about the people who deserve our compassion. I think those people, all the people that we're talking about here, deserve our compassion, including those of those 900,000 I just talked about, who are abused on a journey because they're going through a tough journey with illicit, illegal organizations in Mexico, who are often in stash houses, who are often being held for ransom, women, girls abused on a journey, and we ignore that while we talk about how great open borders are for some reason in the false name of compassion, how good that is in our southern border. Let's talk about the 600,000 that were caught and released and are in a sort of perpetual cycle in the United States. Let's talk about human trafficking in this country that is getting worse because we're allowing illegal organizations to extend into our communities. And let's talk about the compassion owed to our law enforcement personnel, CBP, ICE, and other agents who've been overwhelmed and are being trashed on a daily basis by members of the United States Congress. Trashed with deceitful and outright lies, disparaging these law enforcement officers doing their job. And today, though, as we discuss medical deferred action, I think we should ask some serious questions. Does the process we have work? Yes or no? Is anybody left outside looking in who doesn't know what the rules of the road are? Let's establish what the rules of the road are, and then let's follow them. And let's send clear signals as to what those are, and then let's operate in the right, humane and compassionate way to handle those questions. What agency is best situated to handle status questions for those seeking health care? Is it USCIS? Is it ICE? Is it anybody else? Let's answer those questions honestly and not hide behind rhetoric. Let's set a clear message. What are the rules? And then follow them. I'm encouraged today that the agencies are here to correct any information or misinformation about the current status of pending deferred action requests. My understanding is that USCIS has had 791 deferred action requests pending. Between August 7th and September 5th, denial letters went to 424 of those requests. All of those 424 claims have been reopened and will be evaluated and have received letters indicating that truth. Certainly love to know the question as to what happened in terms of the letters going out, how that occurred, and then now the reversal of that. I think we should look into that. USCIS did not issue any issue to appear NTAs for those 424 requests. That's what I understand. Since August 7th, USCIS has rejected 40 deferred action requests. Since September 5th, there have been no additional requests. So we can look in, make sure that's true. That's what I understand. Historically, USCIS has been the only agency to grant deferred action to someone not in removal proceedings. Deferred action can be revoked at any time. And when determining deferred action, no specific criteria or application was used. Field officers used their discretion in the totality of the circumstances to make a decision. I want to know, is that accurate? And when asked how the individuals who may have received deferred action came into the country initially, USCIS noted it does not track that data since there is no formal application for the process and it's a mixed bag. I'd like to know. I'd like to track that. I'd like to understand it, and I'd like to know about it. And so now I think we'll learn from some of those things from the hearing today. So in wrapping up, I want to reiterate what I said in our July hearing. If we want real reform, real change, then we need to be discussing the root of the problem. The problem, in my opinion, is that we refuse as a Congress to stand behind the rule of law and make clear that our immigration and border laws are enforced. I think we need clear rules of the road, and I think we need to follow them. I think that is better for our nation. I think that is better for our sovereignty. I think that is better for the migrants who seek to come here. I think it is better for those who are sick, looking for care. I think it is better for a just and humane way of dealing with things. And I think we should stop sending mixed signals. I think we should stop sending signals it's okay to come here illegally, to stay over visas, to empower illicit criminal organizations and cartels, and basically have a system where we have indentured servitude in our country because we're allowing this broken system to continue. We just had 50,000 apprehensions at the southwest border in August. You see lots of news accounts saying how that's dropping down and how we should celebrate that. Well, it's still enormously high. It is still an enormously high number. We're still overwhelmed at the border, even as there's decline in the heat of the summer. At the peak of the crisis, there were 132,000 apprehensions at the border. And so as this proceeding here continues today, we need to remember the underlying factors driving the crisis. We need to secure the border and do our job, and that all the pointing of fingers at the agencies and spewing of rhetoric here doesn't solve the problem, but rather real reforms start here in Congress. I want to thank the agencies for appearing today. I'd like to thank all the witnesses for appearing today and look forward to hearing from each one of you through the rest of the hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Roy, thank you very much. And I want